This is a difficult time for each of us as we come to remember our dear Marilyn. We come with so many thoughts, memories, pain, and also gratitude, to pay honor to her memory and to give thanks for her life. And we begin with the words of the ancient poet. She loved poetry, the Psalms. Psalm 121, I believe, might have been written at a time such as this, when the author was possibly feeling loss and sorrow, looked up to the mountains around possibly Jerusalem, and wrote these words, Esa einai el heharim me'ayin yavo ezri. I lift up my eyes to the mountains. What is the source of my help? My help comes from God, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way. Your protector will not slumber. See, the protector of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is your protection. God is your guardian at your right hand. The sun will not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. God will guard you from all harm and will guard your soul, your going and coming, now and forever. I would invite those who wish to join me in the words of the 23rd Psalm, which you find on the handouts that you received coming in. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. O God, as we gather today to honor the life and memory of Marilyn Shapiro, we understand that death has come to her as it does to all persons. This moment brings to our hearts and minds the common concerns and shared destiny of all humankind. We are drawn together by the deep-felt emotions of sorrow and loss, of memory and love. Our lives are rooted in a profound mystery past our understanding. In the face of eternity, we are made simple. Though we know our destiny is to tarry but a while, the time of separation brings sorrow and grief. May we bear our burden bravely as she did during her life. Out of your goodness, we received our beloved Marilyn, whose end has now come. We shared blessings with her in great and generous measure. From the depths of our hearts, we are grateful for the years of life and joy, her love answering to ours, her companionship responding to ours, brought warmth and gladness to our days. We cherish that love and companionship, though she be gone, and will always keep her memory in the treasure house of our minds. May her memory live on in us to inspire service, kindness, and selfless love, and thus endure for an everlasting blessing. Amen. We come together today in sorrow to mourn for our dear Marilyn, for you, her loving family, who brought her back from California. This day, might have been more expected due to her recent illnesses. For us in St. Louis, it's still somewhat of a shock to learn of her death, because when she left here, she was still our Marilyn, sharing with us in such love. We all loved that wonderful Marilyn smile, that essential kindness which marked her personality, and the selfless love that she freely shared with each of us, family and friends alike. She reached a wonderful age, and that means that the majority of her friends are gone. We were friends for 58 years, and all that time I never heard her brag about herself. With dignity and grace, she praised and gave thanks for her beloved Ken, for her children, grandchildren, later great-grandchildren, for her Earl, for her friends. But I never heard her say, "I take credit for my family's many successes." But we know, and we shall hear in a few moments, that she deserved so much of the credit for her love, support, and caring for her family and dear friends. Even at an advanced age, her energy level surpassed ours. Her intelligence did not fail. We loved her because she was authentic and always cared for us more than for herself. We cry because we will miss her deeply. We smile not only for the many happy memories, but the knowledge that these will help to guide us to live as she did. Family came first in her life, and members of her family will share thoughts and memories with us because your words are the most important of all. I remember her as the most exemplary wife to her Ken of blessed memory. It's hard to believe he's been gone for so long. He used to tell me that he was so proud of her activity in the community, but prouder still that she was his full partner in everything that he did in life. He said to me, "I couldn't have done it without her." And his brother Stan said, "How about me? I was your partner too." And she said, "You don't compare." She was an amazing mother, as we will hear, to Jeff, Madeline, Randy, and our late Jan, a dear mother-in-law to Dan, Eric, and our late Maria, a loving, very loving grandmother and great-grandmother, aunt, and cousin who was revered by all of her family. We shall hear words of love and memory from members of her family: her daughter Madeline, granddaughter Lauren, niece Maxine, son Jeff, and grandson Cole. Madeline.
This is just a history of her life. Marilyn Joan Shapiro was born an only child in St. Louis, Missouri, to Sadie and Leo Yaffe. At Washington University in St. Louis, she graduated with a degree in psychology, and she found Kenneth Shapiro, a Washington University civil engineering student. In 1942, Ken went overseas with the U.S. Army to fight for his country in World War II. In the Battle of the Bulge, the largest and greatest battle of World War II, setting the stage for the U.S. and Allied forces to triumph, Ken developed frostbite in the Arctic German winter. After the war, Ken and Marilyn married and raised Jeff, Madeline, Randy, and Jan. As parents dedicated to family, Marilyn and Ken made home a paradise in life and adventure, and that was for sure. With an engineering degree, Ken and his brother Stanley built many subdivisions. Marilyn later joined Ken to open their own real estate brokerage company. In addition to selling homes to families, they acquired and managed apartments and income property. But even with business success, Ken and Mary's first priority was their kids for 40 years of marriage in St. Louis until Ken passed away from cancer in 1993. After losing Ken, Marilyn spent 16 years with Earl Esman. Spending winters in Florida and Palm Springs, California, they traveled the world, danced, and frequented the Muni Opera. And in fact, I have a map of Earl's that showed their 1,800 mile road trip, you know, and he just was like Ken, you know, he documented everything. And we also, someday maybe you guys will see, we have, you know, 6 huge photo albums that he took of all of their travels together, which is amazing. With 4 children on the West Coast, we all ended up out there, Marilyn dedicated her energy and love to visiting her children, grandchildren, Lauren, Cameron, Cole, and Carson, and great-grandchildren, Liam and Ella. As the matriarch of the family, she led and cared for family and friends. Her passions, which I know you all know, but maybe somebody listening doesn't, included art. Marilyn and Ken collected many art pieces during their travels, music, dance, and opera, and she favored Phantom of the Opera. And I remember her, you know, with Aunt Joan, you know, and the operas that they would enjoy. Charities donating energy, time, and money, promoting women's rights worldwide. And she was a witty and charming writer, and she entertained family with poems and speeches, and she brought the family and friends together for meals and holidays, which she really, really enjoyed. You all know how many family and friend things that we had. And she devoted her life to helping family, friends, and strangers, making deep connections and bringing people together. And I don't think there's anybody here or listening that, you know, that didn't have an experience with her helping them or seeing what they needed or connecting people. She connected people in the most interesting ways. And I know you know that, and so, and that's her, and we'll sadly miss her, but you know, it's just one of those things where you don't think they're just such a staple and they're always going to be there, and she was, so, you know, but she was ready, and so we have to let her go at this point, but thanks, Mom.
While my grandma had more admirable characteristics than I could ever count, there were 3 that stood out as being the most inspiring, impactful, and prominent, and that shaped who I am today. The first was her outstanding confidence, her courage, and her certainty of who she was. She always held her head high, not with arrogance, but with spirit and a charisma that made her able to go anywhere and make friends. That's why she had so many that loved her throughout her life and a never-ending amount of phone calls anytime I was with her. Phone was always ringing. Her address book is at least 10 times bigger than mine, and I can't remember growing up really any moments that she had any weakness. She just was always such a strong person. When I was younger, she took me on 2 trips with other grandparents and their grandkids, and I was so shy and scared about the new kids and experience. But when I saw her waltz in and immediately make great conversations, she allowed me to ease into it, which made it a lot less awkward. And there are so many instances of that. With her around, her energy would occupy all of the space and eagerly welcomed others into it as well. She had such an adventurous spirit and made traveling and seeing new cultures and places a priority. The second characteristic that really that I find very admirable is her ability to negotiate anything with anyone. While I used to find it quite embarrassing at grocery stores or other places when she would whip out the coupons and sometimes disagree with how the cashier rang something up or not like a specific table at a restaurant, so make us move until we found the right one. Being an adult now, I find myself doing the exact same things, though not nearly as well as her, and I realize that this is, a crafted skill that she perfected with her amazing ability to handle any situation with anyone. She always knew what she wanted and how to get it, and for that life skill, I'm very indebted. But the third, and really the most important quality about my grandma, was her unending love and dedication to her family. No matter what was going on, family always came first. From being present for each of her grandchildren's births to never missing any of my dance shows, art shows, graduations, birthdays, or holiday, she might as well lived at my house with how often she was around. And when we would go to St. Louis, she would always get all the cousins together, which were incredibly fun and special memories in my life. And she had a generosity and a caring nature that is unparalleled. The only other person I've seen come close is my own mother, who I know always learned so much from my grandma. After my own kids were born and I was able to see all 4 generations together from the Yaffe, Shapiro, Mara, Gonzalez line, it made me realize that nature's way of repaying the older generations is to continue the legacy in the family line through new children. And while it may seem impossible to ever pay back my grandma for all she did, I at least feel better that I was able to show her how important the family is to me by providing her with 2 great-grandchildren she was able to know very well, allowing her story and who she was to live on through my own children. We will miss you so incredibly much, Grandma, and every morning since you passed, Ella has woken up, either crying or telling me how much she misses her Gigi, but I tell her that you will forever be with us. We love you and always will. Thank you.
So I'm reading this on behalf of my dad. It says, Dear Marilyn, first I want to apologize for not being here in person. I have an Eagle Scout project that involves construction running this whole week, and I couldn't leave my scout after 6 months of planning. Besides, the boys are here, and I knew that would make you happy. I want to thank you for everything you did for my family. You were always there for us. I appreciate the constant support during our lives, but particularly when Jan was sick. I also want to thank you for your role in my career choice. When I met Jan, I was interested in real estate, but I had never done anything in the field, and I didn't know anyone with experience in the field. Your and Ken's involvement in real estate exposed Jan to the field, who in turn got me involved. This has brought me the greatest pleasure, purpose, peace, and remuneration. The single most incredible thing that I ever experienced with Marilyn was while Jan was sick, with cancer for the 2nd time. She stuck by my side. I kept waiting for you to break down and lash out at me or anyone. Your daughter was dying. I couldn't imagine what you were feeling, and you stayed supportive and helpful and never got upset or angry. For that, you earned my undying respect. I appreciate that every time you came and visited, the very first thing you did was take Jan straight to the grocery store. It was as if you thought we hadn't eaten since the last time you visited. I miss picking you up at the Burbank airport. I used to meet you and bring you the grocery ads and coupons along because I knew shopping would be in the first order of business. I enjoyed the yearly trips to Palm Springs and staying with you and Earl. I wish those times would go on forever. Please know that I am running low on the oatmeal that you made for patching roofs. My bucket is almost empty. If anyone knows the recipe, please get with Cole or Carson after this. Lastly, for everyone here in person, Madeline brought gift bags with little turkey sandwiches in them. Don't leave without getting yours. Goodbye for now, Marilyn. Thank you for being the matriarch of our families. I look forward to when we meet again. Eric.
I'm the emotional one, have you noticed, in the family. And I'm Aunt Marilyn's niece, and that's my husband, Deaver, and our son Zach's here today, and Gabby, my daughter. I am going to read some words. These are hard to share, obviously, because when you've been enveloped in love since your first sleepover at the Shapiros, and Uncle Ken makes his special popcorn and the garlic salt on top. Probably not salt, just the powder. It's hard to top all those memories, but I'll try to be brief. There's a passage in Midrash. A torch is not diminished, though it kindles a million candles. Aunt Marilyn was the true definition of a caretaker. She was happiest in that role and took extra special care of those she loved. Mother-child, grandchild intimacy is an intensely close bond. The notes of condolence I read included those from numerous people who mentioned Aunt Marilyn was like a mother to them. I was honored when my cousins Jeff, Madeline, and Randy said that I was like a daughter to her. She missed Uncle Ken and her daughter Jan so. She poured love that spilled over from her children into her beautiful grandchildren, Lauren, Cameron, and Cole, and Carson, as well as her beloved great-grandchildren, Liam and Ella. I was blessed to have someone I loved dearly, love me back so attentively. When I took on overwhelming projects, Aunt Marilyn was the voice of reason without making me feel my dreams were unreasonable or impossible to obtain. I admire how driven Aunt Marilyn was in her desire to bring us close together for a home-cooked meal, especially when family came in from out of town. It's hard to keep high-energy people like us idle. I recall fondly how Aunt Marilyn dressed in her little polyester blend pantsuit, zipping around with her small stovetop pot of oatmeal stored in her trunk so she could eat breakfast on the go. The last few years, Aunt Marilyn's memory waned, but her loving heart never weakened. On our almost weekly talks, her memory only existed in the short-term moment, while she had no recollection of most of her past. But Madeline, you reminded me, she was in my writing class, and we talked about a story that she wrote about from childhood, and I hope I find it. It was unquestionably clear that she knew how much I loved her. I frequently reminded her of that while I gave her updates on our family. Memory is a way of holding on to the things you love and the things you never want to lose. I believe the greatest tribute to those who have died is not grief, but gratitude. She attended our boys' Brit Milah, birthday parties, weddings, our most recent, Zach and Gabby by Zoom, and holiday gatherings at our home, many with Earl by her side. Deaver and our children, and Jacob and Jess are out of town, or they would have been here. Zach and Gabby, Lee and Hannah and Israel are forever grateful, and our grandchildren, of course, who loved Aunt Marilyn too, are grateful for Aunt Marilyn's everlasting love. Thank you.
Mom, since one of your greatest joys is bringing people together, I know you're smiling. I have brought a tiny sandwich, carrots, and a piece of fruit, each wrapped in their own little plastic bags for everybody. We're in the show me state. I'm not going to tell you about her. I'd rather share stories that show how she loved and cared. Preface for those of you who attended Jan's memorial, I passed out lyrics to a song that we sang at the end. The purpose was I'm the non-singer in the family so that everybody could sing and they wouldn't hear me. We started out and everybody was singing, and I thought, wow, it was a good idea. A third of the way through, everybody stopped singing, and it was just me. At the end, I asked one of the cousins, why did they stop singing? She said, everybody was crying. So, no lyrics is the good news. In Mom and Earl's tradition, Mom's tradition first, of writing a poem for every birthday, every holiday. On her 75th, for people who were there, I see a lot of them, I wrote a 3-page poem, and it ended, I hope you like this, Mom. You're the one who taught me how to make everything rhyme. But I've graduated to singing, and you'll have to put up with my voice. The story of my life begins and ends with you. Many know I was born a chicken. On the hottest day in July, I was so skinny that they called me a chicken for a long time. And since I didn't want to take a licking, I had to grow up fast. When I misbehaved, Mom would point her finger at me and say, you wait till your father gets home. When I continued, she chased me around the dining room table. After a few minutes, she'd realize the silliness, and she'd start laughing, my signal that it was over and I could hug her. Mom taught acceptance and kindness 50 years ahead of her time. I was telling her about a boy in school who had a facial deformity and how all the kids taunted him. She said, he needs a friend. You be kind. She invited him over. He was a nice kid. I was never close friends with him. A few months later, he left school, and when he came back, his face was even more deformed. The kids were even more cruel. And then he left school, and the kids that had tormented him felt really badly that he had died from a bone cancer in his jaw. I had always been kind to him, thanks to Mom. One day, I was about to leave on my bike for the entire day and go off on an adventure with my friend, and Mom said, we're gonna go somewhere, get in the car. She took me to a home for the disabled. She said, I'll be back early in the morning, I'll be back to pick you up around dinner time. At 10 years old, I was going to be a volunteer for a home of the disabled. I went in, I helped the residents dress, I helped them eat lunch. They had fights, never violent. One of them started the fight, and he said to one of his co-residents, "You're a French fry." And the reply was, "Well, you're a hamburger." And they called each other food items. I couldn't wait to get home and tell the family about my adventure. She did that every day, once a month for a year. Decades later, I said to Mom, "Do you think that helped me in some unconscious way start a charity for organ donation that we've had for 30 years? And she looked at me and didn't answer and smiled. I remember, Mom. Remember when We were young, so were you. Life stood still. Fun was all we knew. You were the best. We were blessed. Cooked a fest for all the rest. Remember when? Remember when? The sound of little feet was the music. We danced week to week. Our family's love grew to the heavens above. Vowed never to give it up. Remember when? Remember when 40 seemed old, looking back, just a stepping stone to where we are, where we've been. Wish we could do it all again. Remember when? Remember when old past new were born, life was changed, disassembled, rearranged. We lived and learned life through curves. There was joy, there was hurt. Remember when? Remember when we grew up and moved away? You told us, save time for play. We won't be sad, we'll be glad for all your love we've had, and we'll remember when. I remember, Mom, I was leaving for school. I was the first cousin to leave home. It was a big day. I packed the Cutlass, light blue Cutlass convertible, top down. I hugged and kissed Dad, Randy, Madeline, and Jan goodbye. And I couldn't find Mom. I checked the whole house, maybe in the basement. Nope. I thought, okay, she has to be in the garage. She's not in the garage. Where do I find her? In the driver's seat, ready to go. She drives the 4 hours to college, sets me up. I can't find her there. She's setting up all the other kids. 4 years later, I have a longer drive to Yale in Connecticut, and I say goodbye, and this time I knew where to look. She was in the driver's seat. After Madeline and Dan's big day, I was heading to Texas for surgical training. Mom drives all the way. I had a small condo, no furniture. She bought me 100 plants. When we lost Ken, Mom was up all night the night before, typing. I heard her all night on a typewriter. The next morning, she gave me a sheet of paper and she said, if I'm not able to read this, would you do it? And I said, sure, Mom. But then she got up and orated the most beautiful thing. And she said that Ken was first a parent, even on some applications where it asked for his job, he put parent and husband. When it was over, I said, Mom, we're going to say the same about you. Many of you don't know that I had a one-performance career as a stand-up comic. I was on a ship with Maria. We went to a comedy show at night, and there was the first comedian, and there was the second comedian, and they were okay. And then the announcer says, and our next comedian is Jeff Shapiro. And I think, is there really somebody else with my name? And Maria had set me up. So I go up, I wasn't really concerned if I made anybody laugh as long as I made Maria laugh. She'd heard all the jokes 10 times. I said, how many of you are married? And some hands. And how many of you are happily married? And I started with my 10-wife jokes. Well, the secret to a happy marriage is to go out to dinner twice a week. So I go on Tuesdays, and Maria goes on Thursdays. And then I realized something. Since Maria and I don't drink, we were the only ones in this club that weren't drunk. People were laughing because they were so drunk. It didn't even matter what I said. Once I just stood there, and they were roaring. Mom was also a comedian. One of the funniest things, we were skiing with the Levinsons at the Lake of the Ozarks. Mom and Dad were double skiing. And if you can remember Ken's chicken legs on 2 skis, and they're both skiing next to each other, and then when they got tired and they fell, I circled the boat around between them, and they're ready to get in the boat, and I said, nope, you're not getting in until I get a picture of the 2 of you holding hands on skis. And that's when the comedy began, because my dad wanted to get in the boat. So we got him up, and he moves over and puts out his hand, and she gets nervous, and she starts waving him away. And this went on. I was laughing so hard I could almost drive the boat. I almost couldn't drive the boat. And I even brought the picture. They finally did it, and it's one of my joys. Mom loved to dance. I, as a gymnast and having a roommate who later formed his own dance company in New York, I learned to dance. And once I was trying to show Mom the hustle, and teach her the basic step. And it turned out that I didn't need to teach her anything. She was such a good follower, we just were able to dance. We danced in the kitchen. She danced with Dad. She danced with Earl. Mom would frequently drop pearls on the table, pearls of wisdom. She was a volunteer for the charity that I started, 1 month a year for 25 years. Do the math of how many years she volunteered for one charity. At the finish line one year, this is a run, 200-mile run for organ donation, 12 on a team. A team was at the medals booth. I think Marilyn was giving out the medals. And one team, they called me over. Mom and Earl were in the merchandise booth. They called me over because one team was really unhappy. They had run with a little boy's picture for 200 miles on their chest because he needed a liver transplant. But their volunteers didn't show up in the middle of the night, and they weren't going to get their medals. I didn't know what to do. Mom comes over and drops the pearl. She said, okay, you have 12 of your team members here. Each of you go volunteer 1 hour. It was brilliant. They did that. They got their medals. Everybody was happy. Another of Mom's pearls. Taking care of patients in the intensive care unit for many decades. I'm a specialist on end of life. I even developed my own 7-step grief protocol for families. And it was very effective. I heard from them later. Anticipatory grief, grieving after death. Many people at the end of life are in fear, and they become angry, cruel to their own family members. Over and over again, this story repeats. Mom and Ken were the kindest, most loving people, happy people to the end of their lives I've ever known. I spoke to Mom a couple days before she fell. All she could say, I asked her, Mom, what are you going to do when you get to heaven one day? She said, I'm going to go find Ken. I haven't talked to him in a long time. Then she went into, I am the luckiest person on the planet. I've had the greatest parents, the greatest husband, the greatest family, and the greatest friends. I'm just the luckiest. And this is at the end of her life. Mom, thanks for teaching us that faith is about doing. You are how you act, not what you believe. Nobody's perfect, and that's okay. And if you always want more, happiness will never come. How does Mom's story last forever? Will our special memories survive? Your love we will hold on to, not always easy, we may cry. Somehow our happiness you captured in a time and place that stands still. You'll live on inside our hearts and always will. Being forgotten is a fear many have about death. A second death occurs when no one alive remembers you. You shared love with so many people and generations. You will live on, Mom. So, where do we look for you now, Mom? All of you know where I'm going to look, in the front seat of the Cutlass. Except for one detail. Mom is visiting me at Stanford. I'm at work. I'd had that Cutlass forever. It was falling apart. And I took a different car to work. And Mom calls me at work and says, where are the keys to the Cutlass? I told her where the keys were. I said, be sure to let it warm up, Mom. It hasn't been driven in a long time. So I talked to her later in the day. And I said, well, did it start okay? Sure, no problem. Did you go did you have any trouble getting there and back, remembering Cousin Mark's borrowing of the car in Texas and the transmission fluid all ran out and he got stuck? She said, I didn't go anywhere. I said, okay, well, you started the car and you didn't go anywhere, Mom. What did you do? I sold it. She did. It was gone. Although, remarkably, a friend of mine had the exact same light blue Cutlass convertible with a white top. The next time she visited, I parked it in the driveway and I said, Mom, you're not going to believe it. I bought it back. So the Sontag kids and the Ken Shapiro kids are now orphans. It's unsettling being in St. Louis for the first time without a house, without a home. Luckily, we have so many cousins and our 4 Levinson sisters that are anchored here. To our family, maximum gratitude for your calls and emails, helping make Mom's journey to God joyous. If you ever want to share Mom's stories, please call. In the end, Mom, you got me as a son. I got you as a mom. I won.
thank you each for your beautiful words, and I know you speak for all of the family when sharing these beautiful memories. I witnessed the love in your family for many years. She loved you so much. She took Maria, Dan, and Eric into her heart as her own. She loved so much to be with you, her grandchildren, and then with Liam and Ella, who she loved so much. She was a very dear sister-in-law and aunt, so happy to be part of that legendary Shapiro clan. And we saw each other often at significant family celebrations and parties and sad times as well. Losing her, Ken, as was said, was so difficult for her. And as you told us, she mourned with such dignity. She always spoke of him with such love and was so lucky that Earl came into her life. He brought out her smiles again, shared her values and interests, and nothing bad about the fact that they came to Temple often and always had such wonderful words, such happy tales of their life together. I consider myself lucky to have been one of her friends. She had an innate ability to connect with others. She was a great listener and also a compelling storyteller. She shared so many activities in the community and the congregation. She had a deep ethical concern, and she didn't give up when she was fighting her battles. She was very active in our social action committee, especially when her friend Ellen Levinson was the chair. We know where she stood politically. She was not shy about saying that Rachel Maddow was her favorite commentator. She felt deeply, as was said, about women's issues, working with pro-choice organizations. And I remember early in the fight, pre-Roe, how we worked together to try to help people who needed to get an abortion to go out of state to get them. She was involved in what we called the Clergy Advisory Council. She supported Planned Parenthood and other groups in these efforts. And even though she didn't have a title of leader or chairperson, she was there with such vigorous activities that she inspired many others to continue on. As was said, she had many interests. I love to talk music with her, especially opera and Broadway music of all genres. And she took such advantage of all the cultural institutions here. As was said, she loved to visit her family in California and Oregon and Washington. And over the years, as Jeff, the child with the best name, of course, as Jeff told us, the Golden Gate Relay, and an incredible, incredible charity. I suggest that, as Jeff suggested to me, you look up goldengaterelay.com and see all that they did. She lived independently until memory loss and age made this impossible, and she made an appointment to come to see me in my office and said, "I have the most wonderful children. They are demanding. They're giving me orders that I come out and live with them." And she was sorry to leave St. Louis, but so thrilled that you, her children, wanted her with them. I know she lived with Randy and Madeline, and all 4 children took such good care of her until she had to go into a memory center. She renewed love and friendships that she had made with you, your families, and friends out west. She never felt alone or abandoned. You showed her that you had learned the lessons that she taught to you, lessons of selfless love, of everlasting care and understanding, and that you would never abandon her. She survived several bouts of cancer and other health issues, and unfortunately, not too long ago, she fell and broke her hip and was never able to recover. The woman who had recovered from so much was unable at her age to continue on. So many of you called, traveled to visit, to see her, to share in love. And she was not alone, even at her last moments in life. I know that Randy and Eric and so many others who are unable to be here today will either see this live stream now or later when it will be available. She loved each of us so much. And we are grateful that she is relieved of her burden of that last illness. Now we can do what was done today, to tell the stories, to remember her wonderful life, to hold those memories in our minds as guarantees that she will live on forever and continue to guide us. Just as she mourned with such dignity too many times, so may we mourn in the same manner, crying our tears and then continuing on in life to bring blessing, healing, and hope. May her memory always be a blessing, and may her rest be peace. Amen. In this spirit of memory and of faith, I would ask those who are able to please rise for the words of the El Malei Rachamim. El Malei Rachamim Shochein Bamaromim Hamtzei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei HaShechina Im Kadoshim Utahorim Kezohar Harakia Mazhirim Et Nishmat Miriam Bat Yisrael Vashendel Shahalacha La'olama Baal harachamim yastireha b'seiter kanafav la'olamim v'yitzror b'yitzror chayim et nishmata Adonai hu nachalata v'tanuach b'shalom al mishkava v'nomar amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to our loved one, Marilyn Joan Shapiro, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let her find refuge in your eternal presence, and let her soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. You are her inheritance. May she rest in peace, and let us say,